All right, let's dive into a pretty cool school project today.
Oh, yeah. Sounds interesting.
We're going to be looking at two students, Kesser and Steen, who are working on this fascinating project about a really unique ecosystem, and it's all for a school assignment.
Wow, that's ambitious.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So their professor actually sent them out into the field to do some hands-on research.
Oh, wow.
They're in their own coastal hometown.
So cool. Much better than just reading about it in a textbook.
Exactly. So Kesser and Steen, they're exploring this coastline with these dramatic cliffs.
Oh, I love that kind of scenery.
But here's the thing. Twice a day, the tide goes out, and it reveals these huge mud flats that are usually underwater.
You mean they're hidden?
Yeah.
Huh, so what's that called again?
It's called ebbe in Danish.
Ebbe.
Ebbe. And when the tide goes out, it exposes all this amazing light that you wouldn't normally see.
Like a secret world.
Exactly. And that's what their project is all about. They're looking at what might happen if they build a dike to cover up these mud flats.
Oh, to cover them up.
Yeah, which could really affect this hidden ecosystem.
I bet it sounds like these mudflats are super important, not just barren stretches of mud.
That's right.
There's got to be tons of life there.
So what kind of creatures are we talking about here? What makes these mudflats so special?
Well, first you have, like, the microscopic life, like blue-green algae and diatoms,
yeah.
which form, they form the base of the food chain.
Right.
So they're really important for the whole ecosystem.
Wow, that's amazing. Something so small having such a big impact.
I know, it's pretty cool.
So what other creatures depend on these mudflats?
Well, you've got your mussels, they're clinging to the rocks.
Okay.
And then there's sandworms burrowing through the mud.
Ew.
Yeah, and, snails gliding along, and then all sorts of crustaceans just kind of scuttling around.
Wow, so it's really lively.
Oh, yeah. And we can't forget about the birds. There are flocks of ducks and wading birds all looking for a meal on these mudflats.
So it's like this underwater city that pops up when the tide goes out.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So I bet Kesser and Steen are having a blast out there.
Oh, for sure. It's like a completely different world when that tide is low.
Absolutely. It really shows you how powerful nature is and how everything is connected.
It really does.
But getting back to that dike, why would anyone even think about covering up this awesome ecosystem?
Well, there are a few reasons.
Okay.
Like coastal protection with the rising sea levels.
Right.
And they mention possible development projects.
Oh, I see.
But Kesser and Steen, they're really focusing on the risks involved, especially because it's right by a cliff.
So let's break it down. What kind of risks are they finding?
Well, the biggest one is losing the habitat.
Right.
If you cover up the mudflats, all those creatures, they'd lose their homes.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and then you have the birds who depend on those mudflats for food.
Yeah.
They would lose a very important feeding ground.
So it's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
One change leads to another.
And we also have to think about the coast itself.
Oh, right. How the mudflats protect against erosion.
Yeah, they act like a natural buffer for the cliffs. They kind of absorb the energy from the waves.
So they take the hit for the cliffs.
Exactly, and they trap sediment, which can actually help build up the coastline.
It's like nature's own defense system.
That's a good way to put it.
But that also means if you remove the mudflats,
the waves would slam right into the cliffs, increasing the risk of erosion, maybe even causing the cliffs to collapse.
That's scary.
It is, but it sounds like Kesser and Steen are doing some good research on alternatives to the dike, ways to achieve those goals without destroying the mudflats.
Oh, that's great to hear. So what are some of these alternatives?
Well, they're looking into some interesting things, ways to work with nature, not against it.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Things like restoring salt marshes, creating artificial reefs offshore.
Oh, wow. So let's dive into these alternatives.
So about these alternatives.
Yeah, these nature-based solutions sound promising.
They really are. Like, using what's already there to protect the coast, it's much better than just building a big wall.
I agree. So what exactly are they looking at?
Well, one option is to restore or protect those salt marshes.
Salt marshes?
Yeah, they act like natural barriers against the waves in those storm surges.
Oh, I see.
It's a softer approach to coastal protection.
So you're basically letting nature do its thing.
Exactly. And the best part is salt marshes are full of life, tons of different plants and animals, plus they help filter out pollutants and keep the water clean.
That's awesome. Two birds with one stone.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're also looking at creating artificial reefs offshore.
Artificial reefs, like man-made ones?
Yeah, they help break up the wave energy before it hits the shore, so less erosion, better protection.
Interesting. So you're building a barrier further out, not right on the coast.
Exactly. And they can be made of all sorts of things.
Oh, like what?
Concrete blocks, old ships, even recycled tires.
Wow, turning trash into treasure.
It's pretty cool, and the idea is to create a habitat for marine life, which also helps protect the coast.
That's amazing, but what about the cliffs? Do these solutions protect them as well as the mudflats?
That's a great question, and it really depends
On what?
on the specific location, how bad the erosion is, and the waves and currents in that area.
So each situation is unique.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and that's what makes Kesser and Steen's work so important.
Oh, how so?
They're not just looking at the big picture, they're really getting into the specifics of their local ecosystem
Oh,
to see what would actually work best in their situation.
it's real-world problem solving.
Absolutely, and it shows how important collaboration is. You know, you need scientists, engineers, policymakers, and the community all working together.
It takes a village.
You got it.
Yeah.
But they're also looking at the little guys, the fascinating creatures that call these mudflats home.
Oh, yes. The mudflat inhabitants. Tell me more.
Well, one that's pretty cool is the lugworm.
Lugworm, what's that?
It's this little worm that plays a vital role in keeping the mudflats healthy
Oh, really, Al?
by digging tunnels that let oxygen get to the deeper layers.
So it's like an earthworm of the sea.
Exactly. And those tunnels create shelter for other creatures, too.
So it's like an underground apartment complex.
Exactly. It's amazing how this little worm creates such a big impact.
It really is. What other creatures are they studying?
Well, there are all kinds of bivalves, like cockles and razor clams.
Okay, I've heard of those.
They filter the water as they feed, so they help keep the ecosystem clean.
It's like a natural water purifier.
Yeah. And then there are the crabs, always scuttling around looking for food. Some of them even burrow into the mud.
So it's like a hidden city under our feet.
That's a great way to put it, and it's something most people never even notice.
Yeah, you have to really look closely to see it.
And that's what Kesser and Steen are learning. Even those boring mudflats are full of life and incredibly important for our planet.
Absolutely, every little bit counts.
Speaking of little things, let's talk about the microscopic world of the mudflats, those blue-green algae and diatoms.
Yeah, those tiny powerhouses. What's the story there?
Well, blue-green algae, they're actually bacteria, but they can photosynthesize, just like plants.
Oh.
They've been around forever, and they're super important for producing oxygen and converting sunlight into energy.
So they're the foundation of the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And diatoms are single-celled algae, but they have these beautiful glass shells.
Oh, cool. I've never seen that.
And they're photosynthetic, too, one of the most abundant organisms on Earth.
That's amazing. But how does that energy from photosynthesis get to the bigger creatures?
It's all about the food web. Those algae and bacteria are eaten by tiny grazers like copepods.
Okay.
And those grazers are eaten by larger invertebrates and so on up the chain to the fish and birds.
So it all starts with those tiny organisms.
Exactly. It's incredible how everything is connected and how important it is to protect biodiversity at every level.
Yeah, even the stuff we can't see.
Right. And that brings us back to Kesser and Steen's project. They're learning about the risks of building a dike, exploring those nature-based solutions, and uncovering all this amazing biodiversity.
So what's next for them?
Well, they're putting all their findings together and coming up with recommendations on how to protect the mudflats.
Oh, that's great.
And their professor is encouraging them to think about the ethics and the social impact of their recommendations.
So it's not just about the science.
Exactly. It's about finding solutions that work for the environment and the community.
It's a lot for a school project, but I think they can handle it.
Me too. Their curiosity and their passion is really inspiring.
It shows you that even young people can make a difference.
Absolutely. So let's recap what we've learned about mudflats.
Yeah. What are the key takeaways here?
Well, first of all, mudflats are not wastelands. They're teeming with life. They're important for erosion control, filtering pollutants, and providing habitat.
And we've seen how human actions like building a dike can really harm these ecosystems.
Yeah, but we've also learned about those nature-based solutions working with nature instead of against it.
And Kesser and Steen have shown us how important it is to look at the big picture and find solutions that benefit everyone.
Exactly. So what can our listeners take away from all of this?
Yeah, how can they apply this to their own lives?
I think it's a reminder that even the seemingly boring parts of nature are full of wonder and incredibly valuable.
We need to pay attention to all of it.
Exactly. And I think it also shows the power of curiosity, asking questions and digging deeper into the science.
We can all learn something from Kesser and Steen.
Absolutely. They're an inspiration to us all.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see these students tackling such big questions.
I know, right? So important, thinking about the ethics and the impact of their work.
Absolutely. They're learning that it's not just about the science.
Yeah, there are values and priorities to consider.
Right, like what kind of future we want, it's a big decision.
So let's pretend we're Kesser and Steen for a minute.
We're standing on that cliff, looking out at those incredible mud flats.
Yeah.
The tide's going out, revealing all that amazing life.
What are we thinking?
What questions are swirling around in our heads?
I think for me, it's just like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
All this life in such a harsh environment. It really makes you think about how much we don't know.
And how everything is connected.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, are we going to protect this?
Yeah. Or will we just go for the short-term gains?
It's a tough question.
It is. And it's not just about mudflats. It's about how we treat the whole environment.
So true. Kesser and Steen's research has given us a lot to think about.
But there's one more thing I want to bring up.
Okay, what's that?
The source material mentions that these coastal areas are facing even more pressure now.
Oh, right, from things like climate change.
Exactly. Rising sea levels, changing weather patterns.
Yeah, it's a lot for these ecosystems to handle.
So the choices we make today are super important.
They really are. It's about the legacy we leave behind.
It's a call to action for everyone.
To learn more, get involved, and protect our planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these challenges and find your own ways to make a difference. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.